Mary Milburn, American singer who's used to performing for American presidents and world leaders, sang the Indian national anthem in the presence of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his final engagement in US. Mary is joining us live on CNN News 18. Very many congratulations first up for that wonderful rendition. And the entire country is raving about it. Everybody here is very touched. It was early morning, but everybody's seen it. And the one thing that the entire country is talking about is that gesture of you touching the prime minister's feet. Of course, you've talked about it on your Twitter, but I do want you to explain to our viewers what made you do that.
Well, Shivani, it's so great to see you, and thank you for having me on. It was such a special night. I'm still a bit speechless, to be quite honest, this morning here in Washington, D.C. When I woke up early this morning, I kind of pinched myself and said, did that really happen last night? Was I really singing on stage next to the Honorable His Excellency Prime Minister Modi, who I have such admiration and respect for, and being given the opportunity to perform last night for the Prime Minister's concluding event for the State Honorable was, I have to say, probably one of the highlights of my career to date. He is such a remarkable man, a very kind, humble man. He's a true man of the people, and you all know that being in India. But I tell you, it was beautiful for the United States this week to see India, the Indian culture on full display, to really see the vastness of the Prime Minister, his leadership, and what he's doing in the country that is certainly contributing to the US-India relationship. And so last night, in my studies, I have to certainly thank my Hindi coach, Dr. Mokshraj, who not only is my Hindi teacher, but he served as the cultural diplomat at the Embassy of India in Washington, D.C. for years. So he's a go-to certainly as a teacher for learning culture and things like that. And so in our beginning classes, we sat down and talked a lot about the traditions and the values of India. And one of those traditions I learned about was certainly the respect for elders. You certainly see that prominently in the films and in all of the media and things like that, in the context as an American learning the values of taking care of your elders and respect to your elders. And so I was so touched as I would watch that in the films, and as Dr. Mokshraj and I would talk about how elders are respected in that type of form in country. And so knowing I was going to share some time on the stage with the Prime Minister, and I wanted to publicly honor him. I wanted to publicly show my appreciation to him for his leadership, but as my elder. And I knew the Secret Service folks well, so I knew that they wouldn't get too nervous. Because I want to be respectful, certainly, of the Secret Service and the security, but it was just a moment that I wanted to express to the Prime Minister, and certainly to India and the Indian communities across the world, that this is a tradition that not only Indians carry it to heart, but we all carry to heart in the context of honoring a great leader as the Prime Minister. I learned that touching the feet of elders is touching their hearts. So when you touch elders, you're showing a reverence and a respect for those. And so I have such a reverence and respect for Prime Minister Modi, and I was grateful to have a moment to honor him publicly.
Well, you certainly have touched a lot of Indians' hearts with that gesture. And I do want to talk about, what you've shared on your Twitter, for example, of that moment. You talked about how touching an elder's feet is touching their heart. But do you also want to share a little bit of what you shared with him? You two exchanged a few words. Were you able to say something to him? What did he tell you?
Oh, he was so very kind, and certainly shared words as it related to my performance. I just, briefly shared what a great leader he is, and said that to him directly. And certainly his contributions to the U.S.-India relationship have just been extraordinary. And so it was very quick, pleasantries, and I think even more so, this was our first real touch point for me to formally greet the Prime Minister. And I knew that my time is limited, and I wanted to be respectful. So those were I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of my words. I just wanted him to know what a great leader he is. And again, somewhat what I spoke about yesterday in a lot of the media interviews, the Prime Minister is truly the Indian dream. He's the
Hmm.
symbol of the Indian dream. We know what that means in America because we call that the American dream. When you come from such humble beginnings and you have a journey of life that brings you to a position of life that is impacting the world. And so Prime Minister Modi's life is such an inspiration because he really is the Indian dream, coming from such humble beginnings, working his way up. He alluded to this a bit in the speech he gave at the joint session of Congress, where he was a young person visiting Washington, D.C., and standing in front of the White House in admiration, and then now he's standing as prime minister in front of a joint Congress, reminiscing about his humble beginnings too. So he's such a representative of what we all can relate to, and that is the American dream, the Indian dream. And so some of those words I quickly shared in the context of him being a great leader. That was the sentiments of my words to him because not only is he so important to the U.S.-India relationship, but he's such an important figure to the world right now. And I just think that India is so lucky to have him as prime minister during this time.
Your performance was obviously one of a kind. It's still unique for us to have someone who's not Indian and American at that to be singing our national anthem. I'm sure you must have prepared yourself, and it was a beautiful rendition. What are the kind of reactions you got? Because you did talk about the energy of the crowd and the reaction of the audience yesterday. Share a little bit of how people have been reacting to you.
Well, I thought it was such a brilliant idea to have, and let me just first say thank you to Dr. Bharat. To these are names that are familiar, but Himanshu, a gentleman who was very key to the event really happening in such an extraordinary way. So many, Dr. Vijayji, of course, you all know there, who was so instrumental to me performing, and so many others. I want to thank the steering committee for the invitation to perform. I thought it was a brilliant idea to have an American sing the Indian national anthem and then a young lady of Indian
Hmm.
descent to sing the American national anthem. She did a wonderful job, that young lady last night who sang the American anthem. It's a hard one to sing, just like the Indian anthem is hard. So she did a wonderful job. But I loved that imagery because it really showcased the cross pollination, the cultural assimilation. It spoke to the model of the G20 summit, the one earth, one family, one future, that one family aspect. I thought it was a really beautiful way to display that by having the anthems positioned that way. But I tell you, Shivani, I almost stopped singing during the anthem for a moment because it was glorious. Seeing this auditorium full of just beauty of culture, and then hearing these voices singing your anthem already is just so beautiful and emotional, and it just oozes with love of country, and so hearing all these voices, there was so much passion in their singing. There was, you could just, I personally, standing on stage, I almost had a moment where I just wanted to stop singing and listen because it truly was. It sounded like heaven to me. It really did. It was very angelic. It was very sacred to me, as these songs of patriotism are, whether they're American, Indian, or wherever in the world. And so it was such a special night, and to have that moment standing next to one of the greatest leaders in the world. Um, it will go down in life as a moment I will always treasure.
Finally, Mary, can I just take your thoughts on the entire visit? Obviously, you've been talking about the Indo-US relationship. What does that mean for someone like you?
Well, it was an extraordinary week. It really was a great week for the Prime Minister. I hope that the PM's team and all of those affiliated are on their way. I know they're in Egypt now, but as they head home, I hope that they have a sense of assurance that this was a very successful visit for the Prime Minister on many levels. And it certainly was a successful visit as it relates to the U.S.-India relationship. The conversations that certainly were shared between the president and the prime minister displayed that, at the forefront, and certainly the prime minister's speeches and thoughts that were shared throughout the week just culminated the importance of the U.S.-India relationship and certainly the position that India is playing in the world. We are seeing some significant conflicts in the world that are affecting both countries, let alone the entire world. We're seeing, and so I say that to say India is so positioned right now in a very crucial way to bringing stability to the world. And so certainly as the United States is looked to as a leader in the world, the relationship is very timely in the context of its strength. And so I think that was the beauty of the week for certainly the United States and certainly for India, and as it helps the prime minister, that you saw the strength of the relationship. And I think also, again, it was a great week for America to see Indian culture and the pride of India on full display. And it was a great way for the United States to see the prime minister's agenda in totality, the great things that he's doing in technology and infrastructure, agriculture, certainly his promotion of women and the advancements of women in India, his love and passion for youth and how that's certainly stimulating. So we got to see so much of his personal agenda on display that had many parallels to what we believe in the United States. And Shivani, I'll say lastly, it was a beautiful week that put two words on full display, and that is freedom and democracy. That is the common bond that the United States and India shares, and that is what I think is the most important aspect of our relationship, is that we are the symbol, we are the beacon of hope for freedom and democracy in the world. We're the two largest democracies. And so we carry that responsibility to wave the flags of freedom and democracy in every aspect. And that certainly was on full display. And a good conversation to continue to challenge both leaders, the American president, certainly President Biden, and the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, to challenge both leaders to continue everything that they're doing agenda-wise to continue advancing freedom and democracy within country and across the world. So it was a great week, and I look forward to traveling to India this fall for the G20 summit, certainly to see more conversation on the U.S.-India relationship.
And we'll certainly host you on CNN News 18 when you come to India for the G20 summit. I look forward to that, Mary. You're a wonderful ambassador for America, and you're quickly becoming an ambassador for India too. So many congratulations once again on your performance, and all the very best.
Thanks so much, Shivani. I look forward to seeing you when I come to India.